Hello, welcome back into the Lions247 Podcast. I'm Tyler Donohue. He is Sean Fitz. Whether you're listening where you find your podcast or watching us on our YouTube channel, thanks as always for joining us. We got a lot to get to. Sean, you and I, last episode earlier this week, did a fantastic job of lowering expectations for Penn State going into National Signing Day. Turns out they come away with two signees. We're going to hear from one of them on this episode. The other was a bit of a signing day surprise.
Yeah, we can say it. I was loud wrong in that one. Laying out all the reasons that the Washington kid would pick Washington. Back up to Monday, I talked to a source that says it's really easy for him to go to Washington. The expectations were not high. Then Tuesday night, as you saw, some things got in motion, and we got on the site. Steve Wiltfong first to the punch with the crystal ball for Vega Ione. We followed up, and Penn State with two signees, as you said. So more productive, more active signing day than usual, or than we expected, to be honest with you. But we'll take it that way. We'll take it that way over the other way anytime.
And remember how we were wondering, okay, James Franklin has a press conference at 11:30. Vega's announcing at 11:45 Eastern time. How's this going to work? Does that kind of dispel any notion that he's coming on board? Franklin took some time in the middle of his press conference and said, I can tell you now, Vega Ione, officially a member of this recruiting class. And then he discussed a lot about him. We'll talk about Vega in a moment because he's a big pickup physically, literally, but also talking about this offensive line class and what they've been looking to do. Losing Andre Roy, bringing him on board, still working the transfer portal. A lot to look at, Sean, but just big picture here with those two signees on board. Penn State finishes Wednesday with 25 players in its 2022 recruiting class, about 19 months in the making since receiver Caden Saunders hopped on board and became that first commitment in July 2020, finishing at number 6 in national rankings per the composite, number 2 in the Big Ten behind Ohio State. 11 different states are represented in this Penn State recruiting class as you go through it. 3 5-stars, 9 total inside the top 24/7. Looking at just composite rankings alone, so the industry average, 16 of the 25 commitments, Sean, in at least 4-star territory with a 90.8 signee average. And based on the composite ratings, this is matching the number 1 class that Franklin has signed with Penn State. He also hit number 6 in those composite rankings in 2018. So look, we talked about it coming off of an 11-11 stretch for your program, a 7-6 season. You kept it intact. You put get the extra cherry on top here. You bring Tyrece Mills on board, and that's what we're going to hear from on this show, the safety out of Lackawanna College. And he kind of let the dust settle a little bit here on Thursday afternoon as we record, and they are situated very well compared to where they were coming off the field in Tampa on January 1st.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a very balanced class. You look at several positions that they needed to fill. Looking at wide receiver and places like that, they did a really good job with that, and they think they have some promising players there. Now it's all about development. It's all about getting those guys on campus. It's all about getting those guys, to be the most productive versions of themselves. We'll see what happens. Our guest here, Tyrese Mills, is going to join us here in a second, but he was the guy that we were watching coming in that we expected to sign. Did not sign back in December. James Franklin, said he can play all 3 safety spots. We're going to ask him about that here in a second, but you've got the 2 typical safety spots that we've seen, and then you've got the Sam linebacker spot, which, it's 6'1.5". He's over 6 foot, right around 200 pounds, kind of fits that mold for a guy that you could throw out there and play the Sam or whatever Manny Diaz is going to call it in his new defense. But yeah, I think it's a productive pickup. Penn State's had a ton of success with Lackawanna safeties, so no pressure, Tyrese, but this is the third in a very strong line so far.
Yeah, and our loyal listeners to the Lions247 Podcast remember when Tyrese Mills came on board and came on board the podcast soon after. I think it was early June, late May. We got a good impression of him back then. Let's do it again now that he is officially signed, sealed, and delivered to this Nittany Lions class out of Lackawanna College. Tyrese Mills joins us again. You see the Penn State flag there in the backdrop if you're watching on YouTube. Tyrese, first off, congratulations. I know this was a little bit later than you wanted it to be, but you got to the finish line.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you all for having me.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, we had a fun time talking to you after you committed before last summer, but different situation now. You're finished with your junior college career, and now you're ready to start one with the Nittany Lions. What did Wednesday mean to you as that was announced around 10:30 in the morning that you were officially going to be a Penn State Nittany Lion?
It meant the world to me, like not only to me, to my family and everything, like because I go back from trying to get this in high school, trying to trying to get to where I'm at now and from high school, coming out of high school. So it meant the world to me because when I left high school, I'm going to do this, and I got it done. So it's like it's a big accomplishment, you know, because I was supposed to sign out of high school. Unfortunately, I had to take the JUCO route, but everything happened for a reason.
Tyrese, what's the last couple of months been like? Because obviously, you know, most of that class signed in December. You know, they pushed you back to February. What's this process been like? What have you had to accomplish over the last couple of months?
Yeah, I can't even tell you. It's been stressful. It would have been a little stressful because I was a little down. I ain't signed in December, but, you know, I had to pick myself up. I had to finish classes. I was strong, just do what I got to do, handle my part. And I got that done. I still got to finish strong. So it ain't, you know, that it's just been a little stressful, but I got through it.
Who helped keep you on track maybe in some of those lower moments for you in December, January? And how much was the Penn State staff involved in making sure you got to this point and you guys finished the process?
Yeah, sure. Dion, Coach Dex. I had a lot of people in my area. You know, when I get frustrated, you know, I call and tell them they'll listen. You know, like Dion, he'll listen to me. I tell him how I feel. Hey, keep me up, like keep my head on the right place. You know, and back home, my D-back trainer, Coach Nye, he always tell me the right things and everything. So, and that's basically it. My family, of course. So,
Dion, you didn't want to have that conversation with Dion. Yeah, sorry, you didn't want to have that conversation with Dion where you had to go the other way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to make sure everyone understands, Dion Barnes, of course, an assistant with the Penn State defensive staff, used to be the defensive coordinator at Northeast High School in Philadelphia, where he was once a star, and he coached Tyrese back then. Tyrese, I think I remember this story correctly from when we spoke in the spring, but he took you to your first college, you know, showcase event. He was the guy who was really in your ear about this is something you could pursue, a Power 5 and FBS level career, and now here you are, with him being the point man for Penn State in your recruitment. How special was the process to have someone you trust like Dion in your corner?
It was special because I know off bottom line, I know I got somebody that had my back, you know. This because we go back before all this, you know what I'm saying? He, like from day one, he told me like you could be a special player. He been backing me the whole time. Took me out to my first college visit. He told me you can be this. So, and he showed it like from coming out of high school until now. He showed like he still got my back. So I appreciate Dion for that.
You've got a unique situation. You were, you know, a freshman in the year that basically got wiped out. Then you had last year. You know, what do you think you've accomplished as a junior college player? How far have you come from the guy that played on that Northeast defense, fantastic Northeast defense? But how far have you come as a player, and how do you see yourself transitioning to the next level as you arrive? I guess you're going to arrive in May or the next summer or whenever it may be. How do you see yourself making that transition?
Yeah, I think the junior college, it just taught me a lot. Like I focus more, you know, I become a smarter player, you know, because like as a lot of guys that's good, you in high school, you can run around, you know, be an athlete. And with me being in junior college, I got like the mindset. I changed my mindset, you know, like I focus more, you know, I take a lot of things more serious. Like I don't play around with a lot of things, you know. So even when it come to off the field, you know, like it taught me a lot. And even on the field taught me a lot because I focus more, you know. I think I can think more, you know. I'm just focused, and that helped me going into the next level at Penn State. So,
Tyrese, you finished the fall season with 35 tackles, 3.5 of those for loss, 5 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, a forced fumble, a sack. It was not a huge season. I think you played 7 games, but you didn't need to get into the autumn season to get that Penn State offer. You were out in the field last spring. Lackawanna, of course, postponed the 2020 season. In March, you get on there, you play 1 game, and that's all it took to get the offer. What was that moment like for you? I know we discussed it earlier, but now that you've had more time to look back at that offer coming your way, how significant was it that it required 1 game?
Yeah, because coming out of high school, like pretty much Dion, he coached me, you know, like he a big part of like who I am now. So he pretty much knew what I can do, you know what I'm saying? So when it comes from like a guy that produced at Penn State, like he did when he got him vouching for me, you know, it's like it wasn't kind of hard because all I really had to do was show what I could do on the next level on a college standpoint, like get on the college field with guys that's been here, you know, and show that I can still make the same plays I made in high school. So that was basically that.
James compared you to Marcus Allen yesterday, said you're best when you're filling against the run. A couple different spots in Penn State's defense you could probably fit, but where do you see yourself fitting in? And what I don't know if you talked to Manny Diaz about this when in his new defense or anything like that, but where do you see yourself fitting in his plans?
I mean, I feel like I can fit in like they said, wherever they need me to play at, you know. I feel like I can fit in wherever they need me to play at, either whether it's the Sam linebacker, the safety up top, or the other safety they got. I feel like I can fit in wherever they need me to play at. Because I've been playing like. Say it what?
Tyrese, we got the measurements for you from Penn State yesterday when they put out your signing day release. They have 6'1", 195 pounds. Is that where you're at right now?
No, I'm actually 203.
Okay, so above the 200-pound mark, and I think there are questions. I mean, how you're going to fit in with this defensive scheme. I think you talked about having a linebacker mentality when we had you on last year. How exactly would you describe your playing style, regardless of where you're going to end up on the field from a positional standpoint?
Just tackle. I like to go to the ball. Wherever the ball is, that's where I'm at. You know, I like to make big hits, you know. So whether that's coming from at the linebacker spot or the free safety spot, you know, it's like I like to just tackle, you know, get forced fumbles, you know, big, because you could change the game just by a big hit, you know what I'm saying? So I like to just hit, you know.
That bar for Lackawanna safeties got a little bit higher this year with the way that Jair played, especially down the stretch, with Brisker leaving, with Brown there. I'm not going to say how much pressure do you feel to come in that line, but there's certainly some expectations based on who has come before you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't say it's pressure, you know. I've been playing this all my life. I wouldn't say it's pressure, you know. I just say it's just like the expectations. I just got to live up to them, you know. Like I never like a challenge ain't nothing. I go get in there and just show what I can do. I know I can show. I got a lot of talent I could show. So I really think it's not like it's no pressure.
Those guys balled out in a big way this past season. Really impressive safety tandem. Brisker, of course, an All-American recognition. Jair Brown was a turnover machine. Do you have any kind of relationship with those guys? I know you didn't necessarily spend time on the junior college roster with them, but because of your shared background, have they reached out? Have you reached out? You know, what's kind of the relationship there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Jaquan, he be doing his little thing. He gotta get ready for the draft. Me and him had a couple conversations, me going up there. But Ted, you know, every time I go up there, I lock in with Ted. We have a good conversation, you know. He tell me the ins and outs. You know, he makes sure he give me a lot of game about the transition from JUCO to Penn State. So we always have a good conversation. And like actually one of his homies that go here, they were from the same city. So they always used to be on the phone in the dorms and everything. I would be around, see him on the phone and chop it up with Tig a little bit. So
Tyrese, going to ask you for two scouting reports here, two guys that you know really, really well. JB Nelson's already on campus, the offensive lineman from Lackawanna, from the Pittsburgh area. What does he bring to the table? And then also Ken Talley, another Northeast guy that you've spent some time around. What's Penn State getting in your future teammates, and how do you, I guess, critique their games? How do you expect their careers to sort of start?
Yeah, JB, I feel like he can go and make a big impact. Cause you know, JB, like from me playing with him, like he got that mindset, the mentality on the field that he want to win. You know what I'm saying? So like he don't play around when it come in the game and practice. You know, he trying to win. So he going to give his all 100% the whole time. That's the thing about JB. He always go hard and he always locked in. You know what I'm saying? Ken, that's another dog. You know what I'm saying? He gonna chase the play. He want to make a play. So it's like it's times when you need that play. I feel like Ken, he gonna be one of them guys that's gonna step up and make that play for us when we need it.
Tyrese, do you know when you are set to enroll at Penn State?
Yes, Sean, I'm set to enroll in June.
Okay, June. So you've got about 4 months between now and then. What's on that priority list for you to accomplish, to get done, to make sure you're in the best position possible to hit the ground running here in Happy Valley?
So basically up here right now, you know, I'm doing classes, and right after class, I'm hitting the weight room. I'm working out extra double, you know, I'm jogging. So like now I'm just going to make sure when I get there, I'm already like, because I know I'm coming in late. So when I get there, I know like I'm already like the same shape as these guys. I can hit the ground running right with them. You know what I'm saying?
In terms of speed, you talk about, you know, playing linebacker or playing safety, speed going to be an asset wherever you are. Do you have any idea kind of where that 40-yard dash time is for you at this stage of your development?
I could clock in 4 or 5. You know, I know for sure I need a lot of work in the 40. You know, I haven't really run it a lot, but I think once I get the technique and part down about the 40, I got the speed naturally. So I think once I just need the technique and everything about the 40, and I think I clock 4 or 5 easy.
Guys tend to
wherever it
figure
goes
out
from there, if
before.
it get lower, you know.
Sorry about that, Tyrese. You cut out for a
said?
second, but I said sorry about that. You cut out for a moment on our end, but guys tend to show up here and get faster in the 40-yard dash, as we see in NFL combines for Penn State. So
I heard Saquon came in and ran a 4.6, you know, and he came out. You see how fast he go. So, you know, I trust the process of me getting there, and they're going to give me the best, like bring the best out of me.
And Tyrese, when you kind of take a look at what awaits you at Penn State, the safety room is an interesting spot because Brisker is off to the next level. Of course, Tig Brown is back, and that's a big thing. But the numbers are a little limited right now because of some of the transfers that have happened. You're coming in. There's going to be some freshmen coming in between now and June. Do you feel like you are going to be on a path to potentially make an impact from game one this 2022 season?
I think so. If I'm like, it all start with me. I think, you know what I mean. If I do what I got to do up here with the weight room, speed training, and everything, I feel as though when I step foot on campus, I can make an impact to where they see that I should be on the field with the starters. You know what I mean, day one. So I feel as though I can make that impact.
And then a lot of people were excited to see Penn State handle business. A lot of Pennsylvania prospects are in this class. It was a good year for the state. You're not out of the high school ranks, but a couple years removed from being in Philadelphia high school scene. You, Keon Wiley, as mentioned, Ken Talley out of Philadelphia. Deion Barnes is there. What kind of a move can Penn State make in Philadelphia on the recruiting trail, and how do you think that can benefit the program here long term?
It can benefit a lot, you know, because like a lot of you get the best players that in the city, you know, from Philadelphia. It's a lot of great players, you know. It can benefit a lot because they come, we can already connect. You know what I'm saying? As soon as we step foot on the field, it's already that connection. You know, on defense, it's all about a connection. You gotta have that connection. You know what I'm saying? So if everybody, like, whether it's like 3 Philly guys on the starting defense, that right there, that's a big thing for a defense because that's a good connection. You know, everything else just gonna fall in line.
Last one here for you, Tyrese, and we do appreciate the time here on a busy week, but you got a lot of Nittany Lions fans listening right now. They're just starting to get to know you. They hope to get to know you a lot better in the coming years, but what's your message about what you want to accomplish here in the next few years as a Nittany Lion and kind of what you're all about as entering this community?
You know, I'm trying to be the next safety that come out of there. You know what I'm saying? I want to be the best safety that come out of there. You know what I mean? I'm trying to just get in there and make a huge impact. I want to be a big part of the team, you know, like, so I want to be a big player of the team.
Well, Tyrese, we wish you well. We'll see you up here soon. Congratulations on getting it done here in the February signing day. And hey, keep up the good work there in Scranton, and we'll see you soon here.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate y'all.
All right.
Thanks,
take care.
Tyrese.
So, Sean, obviously, this was one we were anticipating. You reported earlier in the week that Tyrese Mills was going to sign. There was some uncertainty about that in January, coming out of January. To get that done, you know, and kind of looking at what is at safety right now, is Jonathan Sutherland going to be at the Sam linebacker full time? Is he still going to split reps in 2 spots? Is Keaton Ellis and Jalen Reed, are they going to take that next step forward? Of course, Jair Brown seems like a guy that you can hang your hat on a bit at this point, but Tyrese Mills is right. I mean, he comes here and he has his mind right and he's ready to compete physically. There's an opportunity there because I'm looking at the scholarship numbers, looking at the depth chart, and safety is one to me where putting together the 2 deep at this stage of the calendar, it's pretty tricky and it's pretty thin.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, this is without getting into Tyrese because he's not going to be here for the spring, but it's going to be huge for Jalen Reed and Keaton Ellis to sort of get back in there. I do think that Sutherland's going to be, a full-time Sam guy. You know, they've got a numbers issue there, and that's something, probably not going to be a portal spot for them. But I mean, it's an issue where you're kind of waiting on reinforcements to arrive. Of course, Mills is coming in. KJ Winston will be in next year. So, and you've got some other guys that can certainly come in and maybe push for that. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting, especially if Jair Brown gets the veterans treatment in the spring, as we think that he probably should. And I think that's one thing, you would have loved to seen what Tyrese Mills could do in the spring to push for that. You're wondering, what you're going to see out there. Are you going to see maybe Zakee Wheatley get some reps over there in the spring? Some of those corners, they've got decent numbers at corner to try and figure out what they're doing. So it's a spot where you kind of feel fine long term, but yeah, in the short term, while the numbers being what they are, you do have some question marks there, and there is certainly opportunity. on the, if you want to flip it around and play the optimism side of it, there is certainly opportunity for those guys.
And neither Jair Brown nor Jaquan Brisker enrolled early, so they didn't have that head start. And of course, I think it's worth noting there's also some depth concern at the same linebacker spot. I mean, if we're going to toss his hat into the ring there and enter that conversation, if we're going to say Jonathan Sutherland's the guy there, maybe Jamari Bun's the guy there, Curtis Jacobs, as we saw down in the Outback Bowl, moving inside and shifting into a new role. That's the spot that we've mentioned, transfer portal. Can you address linebacker there? Is that an area? But maybe it's not safety that he comes in and makes an impact. At 203 pounds, not necessarily ideal to be playing in the front seven there. But if you watch the film and you watch the way he was utilized in that Northeast defense a couple of years ago with Deion Barnes, played a lot up near the line of scrimmage. I think he plays his best ball near the line of scrimmage. And so I guess we probably got to make sure we note that at the Sam linebacker spot, there's also some unclarity right now. And I'm not sure that will get figured out between now and the blue-white game in April.
Yeah, it feels like the conversation we were having, back in during bowl practice is where are these numbers going to come from? Because Abdul Carter is not a Sam. Ken Talley is not probably not a linebacker, but he's not a Sam. So you got plenty of questions with those guys. It's I don't know where the numbers are going to come from. They'll replenish eventually, but is that going to be an issue? When they get into August, things like that. Keon Wiley is the guy that I also forgot to mention there at linebacker. So yeah, those back seven numbers are not ideal, passable right now, but not ideal. So you're probably looking at Jacobs at the will. You're going to see Tyler Elston and Kobe King battle and the Mike spot. And, really, I think that's the only spot, the will spot with Curtis Jacobs. That's the only spot that you've got solidified right now. So yeah, plenty of questions. How does Budden factor in? Is he ready to go? So plenty of questions at linebacker, plenty of questions at safety. Reinforcements are on the way, but for the month and a half that we're going to talk about spring ball, I think it's going to be something that comes up probably quite frequently.
And you've said this a few times before, but because of what happened in 2020 at all levels of football, these guys are coming to campus after junior college with the ability to play 3 seasons over the course of 4 years. So normally you're getting a junior college player, you got two seasons to burn with him. Not the case right now. So we'll see what how that pans out in the upcoming years. As we've said, been a bit of a mixed bag with the lack of college products, but at that safety position, nothing mixed about it. It's been fantastic and a huge boost for Penn State during recent years. But we knew about Tyrese Mills pretty well. Let's get back to the guy that we're still familiarizing ourselves with, Sean, a bit. Vega Ione, rough outcome, by the way, for the Washington Huskies, who had his commitment for 6 months last year. He's a guy that was in the home state. About half of the Pac-12 conference offered Vega by the time he took his first reps as a junior. And yet, he's decided he's going to come to Central PA to play his football. Minnesota was a finalist. I had on the table there. Stacy Collins, new special teams coordinator, outside linebackers coach, nickelbacks coach for Penn State, was at Boise State. There was familiarity there. He recruited him on the West Coast there. And, of course, Phil Troutwine went long distance, made the trip out to Washington, got to know the family a bit. He is one of 9 siblings, so there's a lot of family to meet. James Franklin's going to follow up soon with the trip out to Washington, where he once lived. But I'll tell you what, this was a scramble, and it says a lot about the reciprocated interest, trust, and long-term plans that were very quickly developed between Ione and this Penn State coaching staff.
Yeah, that's a killer. I mean, Washington,
Brutal.
I went under their board a couple of times, and I can't even imagine like covering that. Like this is complete. This story changes with complete hindsight because of what's already happened. But imagine Nate Bruce, the week before signing day, flipping to UCLA or somebody across the country where he just visited once. I mean, our board would have been in shambles, and the Washington board I think is there. But it's an unbelievable outcome. I mean, and whether this kid pans out or not, to get him on campus the week before signing day, one time, have a very limited relationship with him via Stacy Collins and Phil Troutwine, not even get James Franklin in front of the parents, at their home. There's a lot going on there, man. And that's one reason there was really no optimism on the Penn State side coming out of this. But I mean, they thought they did really, really well in the visit. Apparently they did, because obviously the results are there. They thought they did really well in the visit, but it was just going to be a lot to overcome. And that was not the case. I mean, it's just pretty unbelievable outcome. This is the 5th. I just closed the 15th cycle covering recruiting, and it's one of the more surprising things. I got that phone call on Tuesday night saying he's going to go to Penn State. That's an unbelievable job by the staff to come in to replace Andre Roy, who they lost, on signing day, but that was one of those ones that they were tracking the entire time, to replace him with a guy like Vega Ione. And he's not a tackle. He's an interior guy, 6'4", 336, but apparently well built. That's just a pretty remarkable turnaround, and we'll see how he develops in the long term. We'll see, it's a long way from home. We'll see what happens with there, but to get that win on signing day, we mentioned Phil Trautwein seems to be recruiting with a little bit more gusto as of late, not only in this class, but in the 2023 and eventually 2024 class. I don't want to say it's turned around, because I don't think that's the case, but things are certainly, momentum is in his favor right now.
3 commitments in 3 different cycles in a 5-day span for Phil Trautwein in the offensive line room. You'll take that, and this is one that
he wants a 4th and coming out of the portal, but that's something to deal with in February. So, man,
you mentioned
it's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned the surprise. Like, once you get through the stunning nature of how this all developed in a very short span for Penn State, and you start to look at the actual prospect they are bringing in here. 336 pounds, as you said. James Franklin says he was stunned by that, because he carried it like 295 is the way Franklin described it when they had him on campus last weekend. Brandon Huffman did note for us up on Lions247.com. And by the way, Brandon Huffman, one of the best in the industry and recruiting breakdowns and covering the whole nation, but he's based there in Washington. So this is a recruit that he got to know really well in the last couple of years and following this process. And he blew up during the pandemic, according to Brandon, was 350 plus pounds when he got back on the football field for his junior year. Was not the same kind. Yeah. Right. Blew up in a bad way. And it was not the same kind of prospect who blew up in a good way as a sophomore and got a bunch of Pac-12 offers. So he had kind of dug himself a bit of a hole. And I think a lot of us probably did in different ways because of the pandemic. And he had to get himself out of that. And it turns out, based on the film that we have seen produced in 2021 last fall, and obviously Penn State's persistent effort here down the stretch, he did a great job of kind of putting that pendulum back the other way. And now he comes to campus. James Franklin says they feel like physically he can come in and compete for early opportunities. It's a lot to ask of any offensive lineman, especially a guy who's not enrolling early, to come in and push for a significant role right away. But I'm looking at, moving forward into 2023 and all that. This is a recruit that was not on the radar for me personally at all just a few weeks ago. And now I'm looking at this Penn State recruiting class and what he might mean to the offensive line group. And it feels like this was maybe more substantial than just the, oh my gosh, it was surprising, which, that was the initial reaction. You start to let it sink in a little bit and you say, this guy could be really important for what they want to do with this offensive line here in the next 24 to 36 months.
Yeah, we'll see. It's one of those things where I think he's probably going to have to take a little bit of weight off, put it back on. And there's a lot of Steven Gonzalez here, just in terms of his build, his features, things like that. And Steven Gonzalez ended up being, I guess, a 3-year starter, and he started part of that 4th year, as a redshirt freshman. So, that's one of those things. If he's got that natural strength that you think coming in with that body type, the physicality that he showed on tape, I mean, there's something to like there. And like I said, he's an interior prospect. He's a little bit different than what you gave up when you lost Andre Roy. But, I think there's an argument to be made there. He's a little bit safer in terms of what you've got as a prospect in the long term. So very intrigued to see how this one plays out. You've got those 2 tackles, and you got a tackle in Malik McNeil. You've got a tackle / swing guy in Drew Shelton. You've got an interior guy in Vega Ione. So kind of a complete 3 right there, in addition to JB Nelson, who's already on campus. So a lot to work with. We'll see how the next couple of years go. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he can be I think he'd be a contributor. Brandon Huffman seemed to like him a lot, trust his opinion very much. So we've been in contact a lot the last couple of days. But yeah, there's a lot to like. You put him in a phone booth, you see what happens, put him at guard, and maybe he can maul some people.
Brandon said, and I don't know, maybe this is the perfect thing for him to say to an Nittany Lions message board, but I certainly believe him. He says he was the top-ranked 3-star out west. I mean, he was literally the next guy out of that 4-star territory when they kind of finalized these rankings of late. And he says, look, if he was out at the Polynesian Bowl, which he was on that roster and he was not able to make it out to the Polynesian Bowl, he says that if he had gone out there and done what they anticipated, Brandon says he's probably in a 4-star status right now. 4-star, 3-star, that stuff kind of matters right now on signing day as we're parsing through it. Won't matter at all when he gets to campus and starts competing. But I think the other notable thing here is, according to Huffman, really no history with strength and conditioning. Certainly not like a private professional trainer. Some guys have that. A guy like Landon Tengwall was training seemingly every day of the week throughout his high school career. Whereas this guy comes in with that kind of size and certainly looks like he has an angry manner to him on the football field. You pair that with what you're going to get in this environment at Penn State. I'm really curious to see what he looks like coming out the other side, let's say entering spring ball of 2023, because we've seen kids who come in and maybe didn't have that background. They're on campus for 10, 12 months. All of a sudden, they look like grown men instead of high school kids.
Yeah, and I think you're going to get that, especially with this group of offensive linemen. Is I think JB Nelson needs a year. With coming out of JUCO, it's really tough to pin down where he's at in his physical development. Even though he's pretty huge. Malik McNeil, we know, is huge, and we know is a big time project to tackle. Drew Shelton's going to have to go the other way and build it up the right way. And then you've got Ione, who's 330 pounds, and you're going to have to find out what his best physical stature is, whatever his best body type is. So there's a lot of that in this class. And I don't really see anybody coming in and upsetting the wagon or doing anything where they can push for immediate playing time. But from a physical standpoint, you've got length, you've got size, you've got, of course, Malik McNeil is 6'8" plus. I mean, you've got huge size there. So a lot of promising traits. I'll say this, and you got to develop them. You got to get them on campus and figure out how to turn them into guys that can push guys around. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But you got more bodies to work with, and really excited to see what Ione's development looks like in the next couple of years.
4-man recruiting class, as you said, still the transfer portal looms, and that's where you look in terms of an impact player for 2022. And this offensive line needs some impact players here. So we'll keep tabs on that. But an unexpected one, certainly, if you listen to the podcast on Tuesday, as Penn State makes it 25 signees, a bunch on this class, full breakdown of all 25 signees up on Lions247.com, with a lot more going on up there related to 2023, 2024 recruits as the recruiting trail rolls on. One signing day ends, and then the next class steps up into the spotlight, and official visits just around the corner, it seems. Sean, one other note here in the offensive line room, not necessarily going to be impactful on the field, but a story worth telling here. Blake Zallar, a walk-on member of the offensive line, got into one game last year, played some center against Rutgers, was a valuable member of the scout team. He has medically retired. He says he's had 3 surgeries in the course of a year. No details there, but said it's been a dream come true, but he understands it's time to step away. And what's cool here is he's going to be an undergraduate assistant while finishing his degree, working with Phil Troutwine, specifically with that center position. A fantastic opportunity for him. But even though he's a walk-on, it's been kind of an exodus from the interior. Like, a lot of guys who were backups or emergency players are no longer there. And you start to say, okay, the numbers got to come together here in the interior. Zallar, not saying he was counted on as any kind of too deep situation, but a guy who is stepping away, has a great opportunity, and kind of reinforces that we got a ways to go in figuring out what the first, second, third team might look like across that offensive interior.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a guy that you could count on to throw in there as a second or third team guy playing the spring game and things like that. They liked him a lot, just a guy that really, had a lot of fans in that building, and, just not going to be, he's not 6'4", he's not 300 pounds, he's not that guy that's going to blow you away physically. He's a walk-on, and you got some value. And I will say, the walk-on class that's leaving, a couple of those veterans that were around for a long time, they're going to miss those guys, and they probably won't show up on Saturdays or anything like that, but they're going to miss Will Knutson, Blake Zallar, these guys that have been around for a long, long time. I know I'm missing one off the top of my head, and it's going to bother me, and I'll come back to it in a second. But yeah, that's cool. I mean, he's been around for a long time. You can certainly take his experience, if he wants to turn that into a coaching career, turn that into something. He wouldn't be the first guy to do it. He's certainly not the only guy to do it from this 2021 team as well, because Vlad Hilling, the kicker, is going to be a player assistant in this, I believe, the strength and conditioning aspect there. So you've got some special stories here, some guys sticking around the program, and I know there have been some questions about culture and things like that, and this is a really good sign from that for that matter.
like Saquon Barkley, Blake Zillar, former Rutgers commit who switched his plans over to Penn State after putting out a track and field video during his senior year, him running in the 4x100 relay as an offensive lineman. It turned some heads here in Happy Valley. It ultimately resulted in a preferred walk-on opportunity. By the way, just focusing on center, since he will be focusing in on center, Juice Scruggs is back. We saw him transition over to that role. We talked about Nick Dawkins pushing, and then it's kind of like who else at guard and center. A lot to look at there. Bryce Suffner has been mentioned on the practice field before, is taking some snaps, but guard, center, Blake Zillar, part of the brain trust now with Phil Troutwine as they try to get this group together for spring ball. Sean, offensive line seems to pop up all the time, so let's put that one away for now. Congrats to Blake for the opportunity. 5-star mailbag is where we are headed for this final few minutes of the podcast. Considering Penn State did not make a strong run at former commit Aisheem Young in the portal from Iowa State, can you share your thoughts on the staff's pursuit of former pledges in the portal and the impact it might have on Nate Bruce's forthcoming junior college campaign? You really like this question. I think it's a really well laid out scenario, and it's one that I'd imagine coaching staffs across the country are facing right now.
It's all over the place. Yeah, it's a situation where, you go through these recruitments and you build certain things. And I think it's going to be a case by case basis, because if you look back at Penn State's decommits, some have gone well, some have not gone well. And some of those relationships soured pretty quickly. Aisheem Young is tough because that's a whole new can of worms to open. Rob DeWawa on camera. I mean, what are you going to do? Penn State can't take that kid. I mean, you can't circle back around. And I know it really hurt them in Philly when they dropped him because, circumstances are, in the eye of the beholder there, but you can't take that kid again. But I don't think they'd be against taking a guy that they had a decommitment from. Nate Bruce is a little bit different because he's going to be coming from JUCO. That's going to be different than your typical transfer. They've seen it in action. And I don't know that that's the best thing in the world, because once you have a question about whether or not somebody actually loves football and can compete or is willing to compete at the level that Penn State is, that's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough first impression to get out of your head. And all credit to Nate Bruce for going back around and doing everything, but it's going to take more for Nate Bruce to convince Penn State staff that he's worth a scholarship to bring him back in. Thought he was really talented, thought he was really, big and strong and all these kind of great things. Of course he was raw and it just didn't turn out. I mean, he only lasted a couple of days. So it's going to take a while to get over that first impression. But I mean, if you look at some of the other decommitments here in the last few cycles, you've got guys like, I'm just going to throw Dante Thornton out here. And I don't think Dante Thornton's going to, I don't think he's going to leave Oregon or anything like that. But that's one where they built a relationship year after year after year, know his uncle really well, know all these people around him. So it'd be one of those situations where I think they, would be willing to try that. And it's not even just decommits. It's these guys that you've fostered these long relationships with. I know, we can talk over Julian Fleming all we want, but if Julian Fleming were to go in the portal, Penn State would have some serious conversations about that based on knowing him so well. And, there are questions about guys in the portal that you've never gone. James Franklin said it in his press conference this week, is there's a lack of investigation going behind the scenes to see what's going on and to see if players have things that are under the sort of under the table that you don't know about. So if you're recruiting a guy like a Dante Thornton, if you're recruiting a guy like a Julian Fleming that you've known and you think you've pretty much dissected all the warts and things like that, then you can make that move. And that's something that, even though they weren't decommits or anything like that, that's something where they knew Arnold Ebiketie, not tremendously well, but they knew him from his high school day. They knew Derek Tangelo. They had him on campus. They had a bunch of those guys that they brought in last year on campus, for better or for worse. Yeah. John Dixon came up for a visit. I mean, I think all of them, at one point or another were in the mix, or at least probably the tape came across the desk or something like that. So I think it's that's a really interesting scenario. So I don't think they would shut out those guys just because they decommit. I mean, I think probably fans will hold them, will be a little bit more sour about that about a situation where a guy decommits or something like that than the staff will. But in the case of Nate Bruce, unless he kills it, it's going to be tough to see because they've seen that up close and personal. They love Nate Bruce. They wanted him to come back. That's one reason the story took so long to get out. I mean, he left the team in the spring. It wasn't until the second summer semester that we reported on it, because that door was open for him to come back, because they think he has a ton of physical potential. But it's just going to take a lot to get over that hump of saying, we've seen this guy in person. Does he love football enough to come in and make it the priority that maybe he didn't make it the first time around?
Another name that I thought of when I saw this question was Emory Simmons, who committed to UNC, committed to Penn State, signed with UNC, and is now a transfer at Indiana this offseason. When he had hit the portal late last year, I was like, okay, well, maybe does Penn State circle back to that? The thing is, and you kind of forget, well, they've had, 3 receivers coaches since Emory Simmons committed to them. You got to separate sometimes the coaching staff that the player was committed to those years back versus the program that the player was committed to, because you see it on signing day, you see it in the transfer portal. Guys are gravitating toward coaches more so often than they are to a logo or a campus. And I think that's particularly something to keep in mind here when we talk about these older transfers as well. Franklin made a great point. Like, if you're not doing your background homework, you may get a ticking time bomb on your campus in terms of, no matter what you think of the player, if the person isn't the fit for you, it could be very detrimental. And I think, though, some schools understand speed is the name of the game with the transfer portal. Sometimes you want to be at that front of that line. You want to be one of the first to have the conversation and get that done. And there's also the fact that, as we saw here at Penn State, Arnold Ebiketie, Derek Tangelo, these guys were not around very long. They were here in January and they were gone by December. And so it is a short-term it's a short-term agreement, I suppose, when you're bringing in the guy who's of a certain eligibility status and has played enough college football, where I guess programs are going to say, this ain't going to be built for the long haul. We want to win games this year. Yeah, there's some warts there, but if we look the other way, very productive at his last stop, we can make this work. And so right now, Penn State, Mitchell Tinsley, the one guy they have brought in to this point, and it sounds like they did a bunch of their homework on him. But there's a lot that goes into here, and I don't think you can necessarily just connect the dots because of the past history with the recruiting department or with a recruiting past, just because of the way coaching staffs. I mean, Franklin's here, but look at on down position coaches, coordinators, just how much. Looking back to when Ishim Young was committed for the 2018 class, there's not many guys left in the Lash building from when Ishim Young was up here for his recruiting visits.
That's true. That's true. And I think you almost, and I don't see it happening, to be honest with you. Any of these guys that we talked about, they had a couple decommits in the last cycle. I mean, the only one I'm looking at, Holden Stays I think is going to be a really good player for Notre Dame. Yeah. And if you're a really good player for Notre Dame, you're probably not going to transfer, looking for more exposure or anything like that. So I think that's a question. So these decommits would almost have to be better. You mentioned Emory Simmons. Emory Simmons hasn't really done anything at North Carolina. Right. So, you think you had an evaluation on him, and it's easy to let that go. It's easy to let that evaluation go. So I think that's a very interesting question. I think it's phrased fairly well. But yeah, I think Nate Bruce is going to be an interesting case study, because I think he's almost got to be better, than he was, than you thought he was as a prospect. And they thought very highly of him, as I said. So that'll be an interesting one in 2 years, or however long it takes him to go through Lackawanna. But he's going to get around Mark Duda. He's going to get around that Lackawanna staff. And, it's going to be a situation where JUCO life is hard. We talked to Tyrese Mills a little bit about this earlier. That's not for everybody. And if you're going in as Nate Bruce, if you're going into Penn State and that was not for you, JUCO is going to be a lot harder, because there's not, you don't have the same facilities. You don't have the same meal plans. You don't have the same, places to live and things like that. So it's really tough to turn that corner. And I hope he does. I really hope he does. I'm rooting for Nate. I hope he finds, what he's looking for, and he's got a second chance at Lackawanna, and hopefully makes the most of it.
Yeah, he's gone on the record saying his mission is to basically win back Penn State and hopefully probably get some other opportunities along the way. I know it wasn't just the Nittany Lions that were taken aback by his decision and his swift departure. A lot of people who were part of his come up and getting him to Penn State were shocked. And I know he's been working on winning them back and getting all those people back on board with him. If he loves football,
you can name drop Richard if you want. I know you know him pretty well.
Yeah, that's one. Rich Muldrow, the former offensive line coach at Harrisburg, and was very influential in this process, and I think has been a really good guy in his corner since that point. Nate Bruce is going to have a ways to go to win back the Penn State scholarship offer, but if he really does love football and this is what he wants, then that's all that matters. You're not going to get through this JUCO life if that's not what you want, and they'll figure that out pretty fast.
I think it's probably more, instead of looking at that decommit list, look at that target list, look at the visit list back from 2020, or not 2020, I guess, but 2019. Guys that may have popped
bubble,
up with
right?
teammates.
Guys on the offer bubble, like maybe didn't get an offer 2 or 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but in retrospect, he would have been a nice fit on the team, and now you have an opportunity to bring him on board. Tangelo fits that. Arnold Ebiketie fits that, and I think you go down that list. But yeah, it's transfer portal's just taking over, man.
even guys that you were recruiting and you had offered, and there's so many freaking offers out there right now that there are guys that are, you don't even think about when you talk about offered guys. So you were in at some point, and maybe you just decided you had other guys that you like better, and you maybe get a second chance on them. So I think that's really probably where you're looking more so than the decommit list, because there's layers there that nobody likes to be broken up with, that's for sure. But there's layers there to work with.
Well, we appreciate the question. Yeah, absolutely. You can throw yours up there on Apple Podcasts. Leave your 5-star rating and review. Throw your question our way about Nittany Lions football, recruiting, what have you. We'll get to it here on a future episode of the podcast. And, of course, the transfer portal is where we're really going to shift our attention now in terms of this 2022 Penn State roster. The recruiting class is set. There's 9 players already enrolled on campus, 8 of them freshmen. The other junior college transfer, J.B. Nelson. You've got the Western Kentucky transfer and Mitchell Tinsley on campus. We'll see what else you're working with, but right now this is the spring roster. This is the 2022 roster. The transfer portal is where you're going to find any additions moving forward. Sean, great stuff. Another cycle in the books. You have covered many of them for the Penn State Nittany Lions. So I know when you see a surprise on signing day, it truly is a surprise. Been great covering this class with you. Again, going all the way back to when Caden Saunders hopped on with us on the podcast, like 24 hours after he committed a couple Julys ago. And now here they are on campus, getting underway with everything. On behalf of producer Lance Glenn, big thanks to Tyrese Mills for joining us. I'm Tyler Donohue. This is the Lions 247 Podcast.